Hey everyone, today on Feathers Off-Road, this is part 2 of the riding clinic I attended with Chris Birch. As you saw from the intro, he's such an amazing rider. I watched him wheelie up an entire hill, jump these huge rock ledges. There was just all kinds of stuff that was just so crazy to see him ride in person. But on the second day, we focused on some more advanced stuff. We focused on hill climb recovery, hill climb positions, off camber position, wheelies, obstacles, and then we finished up with an advanced group ride that kind of just put these 2 days together. So this is the hill climb recovery. So now I'm stalled and I'm going to barely work the clutch. Tap in, tap, tap, leaning towards the hill. Ooh. And then rocking lock to lock on these. Got yelled at because I had both feet down. One is supposed to stay on the pegs. Now I'm pointed down, a little bit of clutch. Woo! So. Right? Too much spin, no traction. Chris showed us a couple different positions for hill climbs. Kind of the acceleration position that we learned on the first day, where your legs are gripping the bike, you're leaning really far forward, taking a ton of that acceleration and going up the hill that way. That's kind of maybe the default way that we should be going up the hills. Going up hills is a lot about momentum. And the other technique, which you can use on adventure bikes, which I'm using here, is leaning way back over the back wheel. Now, you don't have nearly the speed that you would carry, but it puts so much weight and force on that rear wheel that you actually get really good traction. So if you can kind of see my speedometer, I'm going almost 20 miles an hour on this attempt. When I do the next attempt and I do the acceleration position, I definitely move up the hill much, much faster. And you know, there's pros and cons for each, right? Like if you need a ton of traction, this method was the better way, but it burns a lot of energy versus in this position, I'm just kind of standing, my hands are light, I'm gripping the bike with my legs mostly, carrying a ton of speed, carrying a ton of momentum. This really preserves a lot of my energy. So, different tools for different situations. We didn't specifically train on going downhill. There were a couple questions that came up about like, hey, what's the best way to go downhill? And it actually goes back to a lot of the drills that we ran on the first day. The idea was you're standing, running your brakes together, front and rear, and you're trying to maximize the amount of brake you're using before sliding. So remember in the first video, in the first day, I was really struggling with grabbing too much rear brake, and you know, this was really steep. So that's actually what I was just kind of saying there in the actual recording was, you know, I'm trying not to drag the rear brake. But yeah, I mean, we did this loop up this hill, climbing down through some off camber stuff. We did this like 4 or 5 times, practiced all these different positions. But you know, it was actually really good to practice going down hills on such a big bike as well, because I've definitely washed out the dirt bike doing moves like this. So if you notice kind of the weird lean angle I'm doing here, like bike is going way left and the camera's going way right or whatever, I didn't really film Chris's instruction, but one of the new skills I picked up was kind of off-camber traction. And the idea on the off-camber stuff being I'm leaning the bike towards the hill and I'm leaning my body towards the direction that the tires are going to slide. So right here on this little off-camber ledge, I'm going to lean the bike to the right and lean my body to the left, which feels super weird when you're doing it because you are hanging out basically towards the ravine or canyon or whatever is on that left side. And, you know, if I was to draw this in a picture and show you how the force is applied on the outer edge of the wheel, like it makes sense when you look at it or do it, but like when you're actually trying, it feels weird. We moved from that into these balance drills, and the idea here being to go as slow as you possibly could and go in a straight line, but not to use your handlebars at all. So you're trying to balance and go in that straight line by just shifting your hips around. Hands are light. You can see people are stepping off the bike or killing the bike or whatever. It took me a number of times to kind of finally nail this one, but if you can see on this attempt, the camera, you know, my body is way off to the side and the handlebars are straight, and I finally nailed it on this one.
Perfect. Hold on.
From there we moved on to wheelies, which everyone was looking forward to, which is made up of 2 parts. One is loading up the suspension, basically jumping all the way down, and the other is dropping the clutch out and in, giving it a quick burst of power.
Do at that speed, so slow it down a little bit to start off with, then you get more acceleration out of it.
I think I'm like compressing and then doing throttle.
Okay, let me see.
Like totally wrong. I felt it. Okay. The timing is so critical, and I've practiced this a number of times now since I've been home, but letting the clutch power out just before you get to the bottom of the compression really is the key. And it's easy to say, and it's just really like you got to look at it and then just kind of go practice it over and over and over. He let us all run, and then he brought us in to give us a little instruction before letting us go again.
There's a fair bit of like this going on. Pulling up on the bars. Between here, the handlebars and the foot pegs is a fixed point. You can pull on those all you want, it's not going to make any difference. They're very securely bolted on. So it's all in your legs, down and up. So really focus on that drive, and like that compression is what creates it all.
Alright. Let's try this again. Running out of energy though. Let's see. I gotta let the clutch out at the bottom of the compression. Now I will say that I started to get this. Like, I was getting it off the ground pretty regularly at the end, but this was such a tiring thing to practice. You know, I mean, you're, like I said, just jumping, loading up, grabbing the bike, practicing. over and over and over, but some of these were really nice at the end. From there we moved on to hill climbs a little bit west of town, and there's a pretty cool area where they had us training, and there's 4 distinct tracks ranked by difficulty. Number 1 being the most difficult, 2 the next most, 3 the next most, 4 the next most. Chris showed us, hey, the trick to going up 1 is kind of go like this, pitch to the left, go up, and kind of challenged everyone like, hey, we've learned these recovery techniques, we've learned the hill climb positions, you know, spread out basically and take whichever one you want to try. So I wanted to try number 2 after watching him hit number 1. I was feeling pretty confident in my hill climbing, but thought, you know what, I'm going to try number 2, which I ended up doing 3 different times.
Okay.
So definitely first attempt, threw the bike into the hill, which was another one of the techniques I didn't record, but that was kind of like one of the ways we could abandon the bike. And like you heard Chris say, needed to keep my eyes up. It's hard to tell in the chest cam, but it was kind of pointed low. The other thing that I really noticed on this attempt is I just never really felt in control. If you go back and rewatch it or watch in the next attempts, the handlebar is just, you know, jockeying all back and forth, left and right as I'm going up. And one of the drills we worked on earlier was that balancing the bike with your body weight and not so much with the handlebars. The handlebars is what makes you lose control. On this one, I felt more in control, more balanced, but there's something after you make that first little right-hand kick, I felt like I kept hitting the same rock, and it was just sending me into this bigger rock you can see here on my left, which you'll see the same thing happens to me on this attempt. I was unfortunately burning a ton of energy in these attempts, and I really wanted to make it, and I kept feeling like I was close, but I abandoned this hill at this point to try one of the little bit easier ones. This was Chris showing us the first technique of crossing an obstacle, basically pushing the bike away from you with your arms and leaning back. We then moved into the group ride, and this was kind of like the culmination of all of the skills. We've got these little 90-degree wash crossings, the off-camber stuff that we worked on, standing position cornering, seated position cornering. Here there's a number of hill climbs, not this gnarly one right in front, but some of these are pretty steep, really sandy. I was really leaning back. You can tell right here how far back I'm leaning. Not going real fast, but this is like powder sand, and I just really needed the traction to make it up some of these. But super fun area. A lot of like, you know, 2-track, kind of rocky, then kind of just dirt trail, hill climbs. It was kind of raining. You can see a little bit of rain here. Just like a super nice day, super nice terrain. pause and watch Chris do Chris things. Like, why not land a wheelie there? And then we continued on with the second part of the group ride. Like I said before, really varied terrain. Bunch of nice hill climbs. We stopped maybe 3 times to work on obstacles, some rock ledges and different things like that. Quite frankly, I was so wasted by the time we got to this point of the day that I wasn't really being very adventurous. There was one where I told Chris, like, hey, I'm gonna go up the advanced way, and he was like, no, you're going the other way. And I think it was just evident from the trainer's perspective that people were just getting tired, getting sloppy by this point. And I mean, keep in mind, this was all in one day that we did the wheelies, the other hill climbs, the recovery. I mean, we've been riding all day long by this point and dumping the bikes, and these are heavy bikes to be dumping and picking up. But what an awesome day, and this group ride was fun. I think I would have tried more obstacles if I'd have been a little more fresh, but like, this was a fun hill climb that people were struggling with, and I was able to get up, and it's just a fun day. In conclusion, I just have to say this was an amazing 2 days. I learned so much about riding. Chris was a super nice guy. The group that we had was awesome. The bikes were amazing. Nobody had mechanical issues. We just rode. We tried stuff. We learned. And what an awesome opportunity. 10 out of 10. Would totally recommend. Go buy his videos if you don't have them. Take a training if you can. Super great experience. So until next time, enjoy the ride.